Callum, you work with a not-for-profit called GE Honesty. You run one of their podcasts and you've probably spoken to more people than at least the average on the topic of the gene technology bill. If I was an average Kiwi listener, how would you explain to this listener what gene technology actually is?
Well, it's far-ranging, and its applications are not just something that are in medical applications. It's also in agriculture, and it gets. I mean, medical applications aside, we already have seen how gene technology, particularly with like genetically modified organisms in farming systems, are played out overseas. So in a nutshell, it's a way of scientists being able to modify the DNA of an organism, for example, a plant or an animal, and then a way of them being able to commercialize those as utility patents for profit. So we can get certain organisms in soils, and then for different use cases, of course. And yeah, that's a very quick summary, I guess, if I could. I can go into more depth as well.
What is the primary use case for this technology? Is it to boost the yield? Is it to create more perfect fruit? Is it to create more nutrients in the fruit? Or what in your opinion, is the primary use case?
In my experience, and I like to go off research and evidence versus, let's just look at what's happened overseas, because New Zealand is not adopted these technologies yet. But if we look overseas, if we look at most of the genetically modified organisms that are over there, it's 30 years of evidence. Most of them have ended up into 3 or 4 herbicide-resistant varieties of crops. And what that usually means is you genetically modify that organism with resistance to a certain chemical, which is glyphosate. It basically means that they can spray heaps of chemicals on that organism or that plant, and it will kill all the weeds, but it won't kill the plant itself. So it's a way of farmers being able to reduce their weeds. We can go into the depth around. There's a few problems with that as time goes on, and the evidence shows more and more. But that's a very quick answer, I guess.
So essentially, the primary crop that is being grown as GE isn't to boost yield. It's not to create a more perfect-looking fruit. It's not to create a more nutrient-dense fruit. It's just for it to be able to be sprayed with more chemical-based compound, which is glyphosate.
They're very rarely ever improving the nutritional value or environmental outcomes. It's just a way of massive biotech companies monopolizing utility seed patents, and then huge monocultures, and then being able to have farmers essentially locked into those seeds, because farmers can't even replant those seeds as part of their contracts. So it's a very clever way of being able to dominate the seed industry, essentially. It's a great business model, and also inherently part of that problem is they sell the chemicals to go with it as well. So it's double whammy.
Yeah, so of course you can't patent a natural seed, a seed that just comes from nature. The only way you could patent this is by somehow putting some sort of IP into the seed. And in this case, they do it in a way that makes them be able to handle more of the product that then they sell. It's this constant cycle that people get stuck in. I've heard rumors that a lot of these companies have roots in World War II. And the organophosphates, which is the family of compound that glyphosate belongs to, were originally developed heavily during World War II as chemical warfare agents. And then the original company, I think it's IG Farben, was the main manufacturer of these compounds during World War II. When the war ended, they were charged with war crimes. Their subsidiary company, Bayer, then went into the agriculture industry and started distributing what is now glyphosate, which I guess is probably tweaked from the chemical warfare agent, but it still belongs to this organophosphate class of compounds. And now they're distributing it into our food system.
Yep. If I may just add to that point as well, you've got Bayer, who obviously now own Monsanto. Lots of people know Monsanto, or I like to call them Monsatan. But they're also a pharmaceutical company. So you've got, glyphosate is widely known, particularly in farmers who use a lot of it, to now cause what they call farmers' lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, because of its carcinogenic properties. And Bayer also sell the pharmaceuticals to treat non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So again, perfect business model if you want.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't necessarily improve, the quality of our lives. It does help their profits, though.
So it sounds like a lot of this motive, when you look into it, the GMOs aren't boosting yield, really. I think there was an initial boost in yield when they first brought them out, but I almost liken it to somebody using steroids. When you first get on steroids, you're going to see a massive increase in your muscle growth, but then over time, your body forgets how to produce the hormones naturally, begins relying on this external compound to produce the hormones, and it becomes more and more craving these external inputs. And eventually you just degrade all the natural microbial inputs within the soil or the hormones within your body if you're trying to build muscle, to where you've just completely ruined the landscape for it to naturally produce what it always had for thousands and thousands of years. And eventually you just become reliant on the steroid or on the pesticide or herbicide to even produce the crop. So is that an accurate statement? Initially, was there a big boost in yield, and now are we seeing this overuse of pesticides beginning to catch up on us? We're seeing the microbial layout of our soil being degraded to such an extreme extent where the yields are now decreasing.
Yeah, I would say, as far as I can see, there may be an initial increase, which is a nice thing to farmers. But over the long term, as that life in that soil gets depleted more and more with the constant reapplication of chemicals, the microbial life, as you know, is so essential to actually the nutrients that actually uptake into the plant as well. So if you're ruining the diversity in the soil, you're actually taking away the nutrient quality out of the plants itself, which directly, when you eat those products, you're not getting as many nutrients. So we can clearly see that, I think you know this, Benjamin, obviously, but nutrient density across most produce across the world now is declining massively. And that's partly because of the way we're farming food is a huge problem. And big monocultures, yeah, I know the biotech industry likes to talk about, we need to feed the world. But, 1/3 of all produce in the world is wasted globally. So it's actually distribution, access is the problem. It's not the actual production. So yeah, I think initially, yes, there may be an initial bump, but over the long term, once you're indebted in that cycle of chemicals, and just like farmers become junkies basically, because the pests become resistant, the weeds become resistant. So the only answer is just to keep spraying more chemicals. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable, and it's not good for people's health either. I think this is why we're seeing consumers now internationally are becoming much more discerning. They're becoming more researched, like me and you, younger people, especially with the social media age. So that's where the market trends are going. They're going towards non-GMO and organic because people know what their chemicals are being sprayed with. And it was a realization for me as I was walking around, Pack and Save, and I realized, I was like, oh, actually, all of this produce is, fruit and veg. I think I'm eating healthy, but there's lots of pesticides on what I'm eating. It's not really that healthy when you think about it. So, yeah, that's a long answer.
Yeah, of course, these pesticides, such as glyphosate, are highly water soluble. And then our fruits are about, I think, 90% on average, just made up of water. So you're spraying all of this glyphosate, which is water soluble, throughout the whole life cycle of the plant, and then thinking that some of this isn't going to make its way into the end product. And then with these new bills coming through, the 2024 Gene Technology Bill, there's also something else being passed, which is a bill, I think it's a bill, something that is going to allow the detectable levels of glyphosate in the end product to be increased by 100-fold, meaning that farmers will be able to spray more glyphosate onto the crop because they don't have such a stringent detectable residue level. Like right now, it's pretty strict, but they're going to increase that by 100-fold. And this is happening the same time that they're trying to pass the GE Tech Bill. And as you say, most GMO technology isn't necessarily to boost yield or to make more perfect looking fruit or more nutrient dense fruit. It's simply so a crop can handle more glyphosate or other pesticides being sprayed directly on it. And so all these different things that are being put into legislation at the moment all relate to one another. Why do you think this is being done? There must be some sort of reason that the National Party, the parties pushing this, have for putting this through. They must think that this is going to boost economic activity in some sort of way. Do you think, from your point of view, is there any way that this could actually benefit New Zealand?
I mean, I don't want to give the impression that we're like anti-science or like fully anti-GE, because I think there's certain applications there that can be really beneficial, and like medical side, like for example with insulin and looking at different genetic disorders and how we can maybe treat those. Sure, I think that's really, really positive, and maybe there's some things there we should lean into. But when you start getting into agricultural systems and genetically modifying people's foods, and then choosing not to label those foods, that's when it starts to get very concerning. And if I'm answering the question why the bills came about, I think our politicians are either incompetent or corrupt, and I think probably there is a lot of vested interest scientists, particularly part of the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, who stand to make a lot of money from these utility patents. So they've got a lot of people in their ear. You know, lobbying in New Zealand is completely unregulated, and that's, you know, it's not very common in most other countries. Actually, it's quite undemocratic. So long and short is there's a lot of people in their ear who stand to make a lot of money, and this bill has been written for industry, by industry. And I think the timing of that bill being presented is something people should be find very curious, because they put it through at Christmas while most people are away on holiday, on their summer holidays. So the media's not covered it either, so it's not even in the public perception. So there's a lot of problems with this bill, but I think a lot of the drivers are being presented as it's going to be an economic benefit, but the government has not provided any cost-benefit analysis to support the bill, and that is very telling as well, because the New Zealand Institute for Economic Research did an independent study, and they estimated up to 20 billion of the costs from the regulatory changes in lost exports. Because as you know, New Zealand is a largely an agricultural economy. I think 20% of it is in dairy alone. So we're a big exporter on the world stage, and we benefit from that premium competitive advantage, and that non-GMO status is part of that. So to trade that away, we should not trade that away lightly. We don't want to be like everyone else. That's our point of difference.
Yeah, I think it's hard to come to a different conclusion that they must either be incompetent or corrupt, because when you look at the macro figures, everything in the macro environment, you see a customer that's looking for more and more natural alternatives. Customers are more concerned and interested in the products that they're ingesting and the ingredients that are found in these products. So if you look at this from a long term, the best play New Zealand has is to really focus production more and more on that market that is seeking more healthy foods, being more concerned with what's going in it. We, as you say, we currently have a relatively GE-free status. All our produce currently is not produced with any form of genetic engineering technology. This is an absolutely massive marketing opportunity to really tackle some premium international markets that are demanding clean and ethical produce.
Yep.
And instead of going into this, we're essentially doing the complete opposite. I mean, the government themselves did this whole marketing campaign, 100% pure New Zealand, all this stuff, and then they're going to contradict it directly with what we're seeing with this bill being passed. So it is very difficult to come to any other conclusion. And the real biggest player that's going to see the benefit from this is these companies such as Bayer, who hold the patent to these GMO seeds, who produce and sell glyphosate, most commonly known as Roundup. I just personally cannot see any benefits for the everyday Kiwi. But at the same time, Kiwis haven't really even had a chance to have their say. Most people are completely unaware.
Yeah. I think part of that problem is also the mainstream media have not picked up this story and gave it a fair hearing. Other bills have been passed through this year, which have been, I think, exhausted people, to be honest, like the treaties bill, and you've got the regulatory standards bill, and there's the glyphosate bill. It's just never ending. So I have some actually interesting data on how there was a study done by Professor Dr. Valentina of the Wellington University, and she basically looked into how the media were covering gene technologies in the media between 2017 to 2024. Might have been 2014 to 2024. Anyway, but long and short, just to summarize some of those results, is the media had basically gave 50% of exclusive pro-GMO voices in media coverage. There was about 11% that was actually balanced, and then exclusive representation of opposing or non-GMO voices was less than 7%. So you got 50% to 7%. So that really influences public opinion, and we should be asking questions, about our media landscape and how well they're actually informing the public. Because you'll know this, Benjamin, like 20 years ago, this similar bill was presented, and tens of thousands of Kiwis marched in the street to stop this bill. They strongly against it, and I don't think I think Kiwis mostly are. I think they just need to be woken up to really what's at stake, and so I think it's slipped under the public perception.
I think if you ask most people if they want chemicals to be sprayed on their food, they're probably going to say no. But it's just so far. It's just so far away from the average person's reality. You know, you go to the supermarket, you see these beautiful packaged fruits and vegetables and shiny shelves, and you just don't think about these sorts of things. But I know GE Free New Zealand collected over 15,000 submissions, which they sent directly to the health committee, and 97% of these submissions from the public directly expressed direct opposition to this bill. They were begging the health committee to not support it. But on the 10th of October, about 5 days ago, they came out with their own report saying that they, by majority, voting that this bill should be passed. So where's the democracy in this?
Yeah, mate. I know it's absolutely shocking. And so I've watched most of the oral submissions because obviously I'm clipping a lot of those and putting them on social media just to give people a sense of what the public feel of this bill. And after digesting all of those, I was like, surely the government is going to, you know, pivot a bit on this. But to see that bill just essentially ignoring all of the public opposition, all of the comments, all of the environmental concerns, people's concerns about health and our economic exports, to just ignore everything and just go, we're going to push it through anyway, and recommend it and largely like barely even amended it. I think it's disgusting, and I think it's, like, in my opinion, it's treasonous behaviour. I don't think we should be seriously asking questions who these people actually answer to, because they clearly don't answer to us. Clearly not. They're answering to someone else. So yeah, I'm very disappointed with it, mate, and it'll be helpful. People are not happy. This is why our social media has blown up in the last few weeks, because people are now getting wind and they're very angry. So you can see that there is sway now in public opinion.
Yeah, it's a good sign, definitely, that the videos, I've seen your TikTok and Instagram videos starting to blow up, and the YouTube podcast that you guys have done is starting to get more traction. Highly recommend going and supporting and seeing more long form content. What is the YouTube channel called?
Oh, just GE Honesty.
GE Honesty.
Just GE Honesty.
Really great content from farmers and people directly affected by this bill. It makes you wonder whether who is lobbying the government, who's really pulling the strings in this bill, if the public, the Kiwis who stand to lose the most from this, voices are being completely ignored, and then we have international players who don't have any. I mean, if this all turns to shit, then they're still going to make money either way. Doesn't affect them.
Yeah.
But there must be some hope. So the bill has passed its first reading. I think it's in the stage of its second reading. Is that correct?
Yeah. So just to be clear, like the Health Select Committee report is only a recommendation to pass it, to push it through. It's not gone to second reading yet. We are now trying to just confirm when second reading is. I have information that it might be in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We just don't know yet. But I expect they will try to get this regulatory framework and most of the legislation passed by December, which again is concerning because most people are away on holiday in December. So the timing's very, very, very curious.
That sounds I don't know, that sounds a little bit doom and gloom. So that there must be some hope, shine, you know, sliver of light in all of this.
I do feel there's hope. I think now people are catching wind. There is a strong sense of people that even in the comments section saying, well, we'll go to the streets then, we'll protest if we have to. A lot of angry people out there. And I think once those people are mobilized, the government's going to have to listen. We can maybe come back to this, but we do have a protest organised in Wellington in Parliament on the 4th of November. So if people are listening, just follow the social media because we'll be updating people on that very soon and what they can do to participate. And that won't just be Wellington, there'll also be regional protests that we're going to start as well.
If
so the energy is moving.
I agree. It definitely is. There's a lot of voices that are starting to come out. I don't think it's too late. I do think there is definitely hope. There's still things we can do. At the end of the day, if the government doesn't listen to everything and the bill still gets passed, we still have the power just to not support the industry that is pushing this. But in saying this, if GE is released into the New Zealand environment, is there any way to contain it? Is there any going back once GE is released?
No, absolutely not. I mean, that's the scientific fact. That's exactly what's happened overseas. you can't, there is this argument being made by government that there is coexistence, that you can have GMO farms over here and organics can exist over here. Not true, because nature has its way and it will contaminate the bees, and whatever, the wind will pick it up, transfer it onto the organic farm. And you know this, you've seen plenty of growers, organic growers, who have now been contaminated. I can give the example in Australia. There's quite a lot of farms there now. And basically what the government has done is, because the contamination's quite widespread, the government has basically moved the goalposts to allow organic growers to keep their certification, but allow up to 5% contamination of GE genes getting into their food. So it's deceiving the public in that way. You're moving the goalposts and you're trying to make it sound like it's okay when it isn't. So New Zealand has a position now as a non-GMO country. We shouldn't allow it out in the first place, because once you do, there is no going back, because it will just get everywhere. And even more concerning if ag research get their way with like ryegrasses and stuff. I mean, God, grasses certainly will go everywhere, and certainly through different species. And what does that mean for pasture-raised animals? You know, if there's people raising animals on grass there, their grasses might be contaminated. Can they still call themselves truly, GMO free? So yeah, to answer your question, no, coexistence is not possible. I mean, you're probably better off eating organic, even so, but I think we should still fight very hard to even just not even allow it in the first place.
Yeah, the system of nature that we live in is an incredible system that reuses and recycles absolutely everything that it's given. But we have sprayed our planet with so much synthetic compounds, glyphosate, all these agri-chemicals, but way deeper, way more things than this, to the point where we're now finding trace residues of these compounds in the rainwater. So this natural process that is supposed to recycle all the heavy metals or the toxic compounds isn't even able to keep up with the amount that we're spraying onto our land. Yeah. And of course, this rain falls over, like it's the whole country, yeah? It falls on organic farms and it falls on conventional farms just the same. So even today, right now, we're seeing residues of these compounds like glyphosate and organic farm produce that has never been sprayed directly with these compounds. And that's simply just because nature is recycling everything.
Yeah.
And there's no getting away from it. So if you were a farmer and you were thinking, it's not going to affect me, I'm not going to play in it, I'm not going to buy the GMO seeds. What if their farm got contaminated with one of these genes and it contaminated their seeds and they now had a GMO crop growing? Would Bayer or the companies that have the IP on these crops now have an ability to go to that farmer and say, you owe us money?
Yep. And I can point anyone to a great landmark case of Percy Smizer in the US, which is exactly what happened. He got contaminated. And then Monsanto, I think at the time, found out that he had their IP in his products, and he was essentially sued out of his livelihood. He actually repealed that from memory and won. But that is what farmers may face. Even if you don't want to grow with GMOs, you can still be contaminated, because that's just how nature works. And that means you're now liable to the IP holder because it's blown into your field or your crop. It doesn't sound fair, it isn't, but that's unfortunately the way those contracts work and the way the IP works. So yeah, it's a very dangerous situation for farmers to be in, certainly for organic growers as well.
We're talking about people who are the absolute backbone of the New Zealand economy, and they're already doing it so hard at the moment. They're dealing with very thin margins, and they certainly cannot afford to give away any more margin to some multinational. The money wouldn't even be staying in the country.
Yeah, but I'll also say as well, what will probably happen is the same as overseas, is organic growers will now probably have to bear the burden of proving their GE-free or GMO-free status. So it's absolutely stupid. Why should the cost be imposed onto someone who wants to grow without it, and not on the cost of the person who is contaminating everyone? It makes no sense. So
the craziest thing about all of that, the organic growers who are growing with systems that have been proven for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, for the whole history of human kind, have to prove that their crops are growing with this system, whereas this new experimental form of even the conventional agriculture that we use today, but further than this, the GMO agriculture, now in this bill, it's not even clear whether they're going to have to label their products as GMO. At the same time, the organic growers who are just following a system that has been proven forever have to go through all this added expense, all this paperwork, all this headache to prove it as such. Where is the logic in any of this? And how is it ethical to not have to label a product that has been genetically modified? It doesn't fit together. Is this actually in the bill? Is this what they're proposing, that GMO end products do not need to be labeled?
Yeah, I think that there's an important definition for people to understand, because like New Zealand does have pretty good labeling requirements before the Fasan's bill has now come in, but there's a really important definition that they've now kind of moved out of scope, which is a new type of gene technology. Well, not new, it's been around since the 90s, but they're presenting it as something new. It's called gene editing, which is just a different form of it. And the way is that's different. It just to overly simplify, you've got transgenics, which is basically what modern herbicide resistant varieties are. And that's when they add DNA into certain organisms to get desirable traits or whatever. But gene editing is not adding any foreign DNA. It's just making smaller insertions. So it's still genetic modification. It's just a different form of it. So to say that that is just an extension of natural breeding was actually what Zespri said, which I was so surprised in the oral submission, because Zespri's had so much success as a non-GMO producer, and they're now talking about going into gene editing, which is still genetic modification. So they're definitely not reading the room, but they're moving the goalpost. They're trying not to label it. And my question to people is, if it's so great, why would you not label it? Are you not proud of it? You know, so yeah, something's amiss, but we're hoping that we might be able to pull that bill back alongside this gene technology bill.
So the bill is looking like it will have, is the second reading due in December, and can it be passed at the second reading? Is it
I think
reading?
Second reading might be in the next couple of 2 to 3 weeks is my understanding. I may be wrong. We're trying to get a read on that already, but and then it may be third by December.
Literally. So we're trying to pass a bill that clearly is going to affect all of New Zealand, all of New Zealanders. There's clear evidence to say that it's not in our best interest economically, ethically, sustainably, environmentally. At the same time, it's been pretty hush-hush. The only reason people know about it is because of people such as yourself posting on social media. It's the only channel that people have really found out about this. The mainstream media I haven't seen anything from them. So we're talking about something that's going to affect every single person living in this country, whether they like it or not, whether you buy GMO food, be it buy GMO food or organic food, it still has an effect on you. You would think there would be some sort of, at least if this is going to be passed, a referendum or something, but none of this has happened. So what can people do right now if they are listening to this and they don't want this to be passed? How could somebody take action right now? What is one potent thing they could do?
Great question. I think contact your MPs, and I think more specifically just being more cognizant of the timeline and political system we're in right now and who's in power. The coalition especially, you've got New Zealand First, and by the way, I'm not telling on where to vote. I don't have any political affiliation, but NZ First specifically have publicly stated that they're not happy with the bill in its current stance. And there are certain clever clauses written into their coalition agreement, which basically says they cannot agree to the gene technology bill if there's not sufficient safeguards for human health and the environment. So my best recommendation is to contact, email, or write to Winston Peters or Shane Jones or Mark Patterson. That'd be my main three. If not, go and find out the Health Select Committee people and contact those. But NZ First would be my first recommendation. And if you want to take further action, contact your supermarkets and ask what they're going to be doing about the labelling requirements and put pressure on those guys. Keep an eye on our social media for protests and public demonstrations, because they're going to be coming very soon. I don't think this is going to go away easily. This is, unfortunately, this is going to require engagement. You can't be. This apathy is not going to get us through this. So people need to get engaged. Like, everyone needs food, right? So this affects everyone. you know, the environment and stuff that side. This is just, it's too much. We shouldn't be allowing biotech companies to engineering food and not telling people about it. It's too risky and too dangerous. So yeah, to answer your question, NZ First and protests, get involved.
After this, I will ask you for all the email addresses, and I'll leave those email addresses in the description somewhere on this video. So you can look in the description or in the comments somewhere below this video, and we might even leave you an email template that you can just put in some of your own information, make it real easy for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any final words that you would like to say to anybody listening about this bill?
I guess if this bill is going to affect not just you right now in this moment in time, but generations long after you're gone, and especially your kids, if you have kids or you're thinking about kids, there is no going back. This is a non-reversible experiment, and our future generations will feel that, unfortunately, either your inaction or your action right now in this moment in time. So it's imperative that you get engaged and you do something. And you know, if your kids ask you and they say, "Yeah, mom, dad, you know, what did you do to stop this bill?" You know, what are you going to tell them? So I would leave it on that.
Thank you so much for your time, Callum. Where can people find you? How can people support you?
GE Honesty on YouTube, X, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, you name it. We're on all the main social media platforms. Follow us on any of those. We'll be updating people regularly. We've got a GE Honesty website, so you can go on there. We've got an evidence tab, which has got loads of supporting information. We've done a position paper for the last over 6 months on how genetically modified organisms are going to impact New Zealand's economy, health, and environment. So this is all really useful information. If you want to get upskilled on what this all means for you, go and look at all of that. It's a great place to start. You can even take it off our website and you can actually send it to MPs or to whoever you want. So that'll be where I'd start, and that's where you can follow us.
Thank you, Callum.
Thanks, mate.